So, so we went over the history of politics in this country, and we pointed out how uniquely in the developed world, the Republican Party in the United States seems to be the most skeptical of climate change. Um, I think a lot of that honestly has to do with um, well, Al Gore, and I don't actually want to blame him. I think uh, by a coincidence of Dick Cheney having worked in the oil industry before he was vice president, and just a combination of people who had been leading the Republican Party for a while, it just became more and more acceptable to minimize and downplay it. In lots of nations around the world, lots of other parties also downplay the importance and the impact of climate change, but the United States has seen a resurgence of climate denial, which is interesting. Our current president believes that that the environment, these things that environmentalists propose, can sometimes be dangerous and deadly and bad. And there's a sense in which he has a sort of a knee-jerk intuitive response to a lot of scientific issues, and he doesn't seem inclined to listen to advice from so-called experts on these issues. He is not very concerned about global warming as an issue. He doesn't think that it is an issue that should drive policy. He's argued that it is a kind of issue that is going to crash the US economy in favor of other countries, perhaps even created as a hoax by other countries in order for us to crash our own economy. He thinks that all of these deals are bad and that we shouldn't worry about them, especially while other countries continue to pollute their industries. This one's fascinating to me. He finds the distinction between climate change and global warming to be purely done for public relations reasons. What's actually ironic and interesting to me about this is first of all, like, both terms have been used since their very first appearance in the scientific literature. But second, it was actually the George W. Bush administration that pushed for calling it climate change rather than global warming, because they thought that climate change was more neutral and less likely to get people to worry about it. So this branding has, it's gone back and forth. Al Gore calls it the climate crisis. Other people have other similar terms. But Trump thinks of this as a branding issue. He also sometimes notices that it can be cold outside. And he doesn't think that global warming or addressing it should be a priority for us. So when discussing facts and values, he doesn't think that even if it's serious, that this is a strong thing to carry about, that this is, his values are not with environmental issues. He doesn't think it's a top issue for the United States at all. So that's where the current president stands on this. What about Congress? So holy hell, this took me multiple days of multiple hours to try to put this together, because it turns out that Congress changed between the last time that I put one of these together and this time, and I had deleted my file. So this is the current House and Senate. If there is a red circle that represents either a Republican congressperson or a Republican senator, blue is Democratic, and yellow is independent. If it is a not sign, like a line through the middle of it, that is a person who is a climate denialist who has expressed skepticism about climate change and global warming. Mostly by sheer coincidence, well, not by sheer coincidence, all of the people in Congress right now that have ever expressed any doubts about climate change are current or former Republicans. So Michigan's 3rd district is represented by Justin Amash, who was kicked out of the party for advocating impeaching the president. Nevada is represented by 3 Democratic congresspeople in the House and 1 Republican, Mark Amodei, who is also on the Climate Solutions Caucus. So all of the dots in the House that are circled with, that are outlined in green, all of those are members of the so-called Climate Solutions Caucus, the idea being to actually try to come up with some issues, some policies to address climate change. It's fascinating to me how many people are members of this caucus that do not actually believe in climate change. It's supposed to be equal representations of Democrats and Republicans. So Mark Amodei is our only member in Nevada, and he does not accept climate change. So this looks dire, but in the previous House, in fact, something like 40 people that denied climate change either retired or were defeated. So this is actually quite different from even 2 years ago. But yeah, you can see at a glance that about 130, in fact, it is 130 members of the House and Senate are climate denialists, including Mark Amodei here in Nevada. You can play around with this one if you like. Our senior senator, Catherine Cortez Masto, gets pretty good ratings from most environmental organizations. And she stated that the irreversible effects of climate change are preventable if we remain committed to science-based solutions. So she gets pretty good ratings, ranging from about 67% on endangered species and public lands to 100% on other things, based on her voting patterns. Our junior senator, Jackie Rosen, says climate change isn't just a threat to our environment, it's a threat to our national security. Climate change-induced famine and droughts can lead to failed states and global instability. That's why it cannot be ignored. We talked about that in a previous video. So her approval by various organizations ranges from 70% to the mid-90s and 100%. The representative from Nevada 2, Mark Amodei, gets really low marks from environmental groups, somewhere in the 0 to 5% range. And he says, I do not believe it is appropriate for the federal government to advocate one position over another in the discussions of climate change. I do think that we should promote unbiased scientific research funded by both the government and the private sector to help answer climate change questions and bring effective solutions to any human causes. That's Amadei. I wonder about the voting patterns. He's famously doesn't show up for quite a few of his votes, so it's interesting to see what they're basing these on. But you can click these on the PowerPoints yourself if you like. Our governor gets really high marks in the 90% from all of the organizations that measure governors. He is in favor of enacting tougher environmental standards to encourage the sales of cleaner burning fuels throughout Nevada, and is in favor of cost-benefit analyses for economic and impacts of climate regulations. So those are our representatives. President is pretty far on the extreme of denying climate change. Amadei is our representative here, is some sort of skeptic of climate change, essentially arguing against action of any sort. And our senators and governor believe it's important, although the governor also believes in balancing it out with economic impacts. Okay, that's it for here.